Lorraine, welcome. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being here today. So this is the 4AMers series by Slipcase. We talk to professionals in the industry to ask them about key challenges they're facing within their role and the organization they represent. And before we dive into that, I'd like to ask a little bit more about you and Free, of course.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's really exciting to be here. So as you know, Free, we're a creative agency and we specialise in the insurance industry. Our clients really span from retail brokers right through to reinsurers, everybody in between, and affiliated businesses as well. And what we do is work with them to kind of help, articulate their brands, their proposition, really get that potent messaging across at a brand level, but also in different business unit levels, and then bring that to life, whether that's through their identity systems or, integrated campaigns that go out into the world.
Wonderful. So looking into asking you, what is your 4AMer? What keeps you awake at night? But maybe framing it more in the brand building side of things when it comes to such a digital world.
I think that transition from traditional brand building to what we're seeing now across, it's not just advertising. There's so many channels. We're seeing brand building becoming harder than ever. I think I read a stat the other day that the average person is bombarded with over 10,000 marketing messages a day. So, for us, I guess my 4AMer is how do we keep it meaningful, authentic? How do we keep it creative? Distinctiveness is really where brands are built. And I think that's becoming more and more of a challenge. Our proposition is really about bringing the best of B2C thinking into the B2B world. And it's wonderful to see so many insurance businesses really embracing, their brand and, developing their values, thinking about their identities, building out campaigns with really, bold and exciting, identities and really using the different channels effectively. So that for me is how do we keep on the forefront of that? And actually the big question for us at the moment is, how do we translate what we do from a brand building perspective into, a metric that everybody can track. So, how is your brand performing? What is your brand strength relative to your competitors? And more importantly, what does that mean for you as a business? Not just in terms of, winning and retaining business, but winning and retaining talent. You would have seen we did a talent report last year. We've got a new one coming out, looking at, how do we get young talent into the industry, but also how do you retain talent? I think we all are aware that insurance is pretty much built on the power of its people. It's a relationships business, even with all the digital innovation that we're seeing. So talent has never really been more important because, that's where your growth comes from. Having the best people, the best teams, the best innovators, and perpetuating that. That's how you kind of win and retain business, but also grow your business, grow your culture. So I think for us, that's not just one thing. It's really kind of understanding, what brand means, and what the impact of that is to our clients and, how they grow.
And obviously it's very different conversation based on what the client desires. But creative agency in the insurance industry, how are you perceived when you go in this room and present this creativity expertise you have built so far?
I mean, we've been going for over a decade, and we're officially a teenager now. So I think it's been very well received, and it's no different to people who work in insurance are consumers, right? They understand what brand is. They understand the importance of brand at a strategic level at building a business, and generally it's very well received. Most people are. It's quite an interesting part of their day. It kind of challenges a different bit of their brain to what they're doing every single day. But ultimately, the heart of what we do, it's about growth. And that's where we're completely aligned. Our job from looking at brand strategy, campaign strategy, is really understanding the strategy of that organisation, what their aspirations are, where are they going, what are the kind of key markets they need to be in, what are the different verticals that they specialise in, because ultimately the work that we produce is all based on audience insights. So understanding, those the audiences that we're talking to, whether that be a client audience, a broker audience, risk managers, or prospective talent, it's very much an interactive and collaborative process with the client, and utilising their expertise, bringing together our expertise and that umbrella knowledge of the market and how it operates at a marketing communications level can be really rewarding for everybody in the process.
I had a look at your website and how it pops. It's incredibly modern, easy to use, straightforward. But could you tell us a bit more about the headline, Fortune Follows Fame, if I'm not mistaken, and how this came about?
Well, there's a lot of marketing data that really that really highlights the idea that when you're doing marketing, one of the key differentiators is creativity, right? And one of the most important things to growing a business is making sure you maintain your share of voice, growing your share of voice, and that is relevant to your share of market. So being famous is critical, and that's really where a creative agency and a brand building agency like us can work and support a client to be famous, be the one that everyone wants to work for, work with, and learn from.
So, Lorraine, is the industry becoming more creative from your point of view?
I think the industry is becoming more confident with being more creative, by virtue of the industry itself. It's constantly creating new solutions. The environment's constantly changing. We're dealing with evolving risks, emerging markets. We've got clients that work in the parametric space, that work in the crypto space, that work in actual space, right? So as an industry, we've always been very, very creative. I think what we're seeing now, and what is really exciting for us, is that creativity is blossoming through the brands. So you're seeing, I just walked through Bank Station, and yes, there's an insurance brand in the tunnel. Fantastic. Leveraging, sponsorships, but also, mass market advertising, and embracing, video content and, thought leadership content across multiple channels, and thinking about how we can put those messages and that content forward in more creative ways is definitely a big leap forward from where we were even a decade ago.
Lorraine, what's one channel you would focus on if you were a marketeer working in the insurance industry?
That's a really tricky question, because there is no one channel that's going to deliver the fame, the results, the brand building for any organisation. You have to go right back to the brand strategy, which is what we always do with our clients is who are those audiences and where are they. So you have to meet your audience where they are in order to build your brand with the people, the segment that you're trying to build with. So for example, if you're trying to get in touch with risk managers in the US, doing global advertising or advertising in the Financial Times is not necessarily going to get you the same result as being really, really targeted and understanding, okay, what sort of publications are they reading, having that data to see how many times are they, logging on, what's their population on LinkedIn. So it's really a question of understanding your audience, what you're trying to achieve from the communications with them, how you're going to measure that success, and then working out where you're going to get most bang for your buck, and then adding in the creativity and the distinctiveness and all of those things on top. But the channel, there isn't one channel. It's whatever that marketing mix is that you need to get mass coverage with your target audience.
Okay. I have a couple of fun questions, quick fire questions we call them. A piece of advice you'd give to your younger self if you were to go back in time?
I would say be bold, be brave. You know, that's really it. It's you've got to have more confidence and, you know, make your voice heard earlier. I think hard work is one thing, but I think what young people are perhaps potentially missing out on with the change in working patterns is really that networking and the connections and the relationship building that you get when you're in the office every day, and, you know, just talking to someone in a different department or who's more senior than you, and, you know, really being thoughtful about the questions that you're asking, and yeah, it's just being a little bit bolder and a bit more confident.
And did you get a piece of advice yourself from a mentor or someone you admired throughout this career path?
I think my very first boss said, whatever you do, make sure you're the first one in the office and the last one to leave. And that certainly, when we've been building our business, has been really, really good advice. Because, you know, when you're building a culture and you're kind of instilling an ethos, you've got to lead by example. And I think it's really important to, you know, demonstrate that you care by being there. And certainly that stood me in good stead for the last several decades.
Well, Lorraine, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Lovely to see you. Thank you.